Hey everybody, welcome to the ReCoop. I'm Cooper Daniels and I'm a guy that knows a little about a lot. And today I am here with a very special guest. I am here with Staci Warden. She is the CEO of the Algorand Foundation. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me, Staci.
I'm so excited to be here. I can't turn myself into a circus animal of any kind, but I am glad to. I'm glad to be here in the flesh. You,
Yeah, you're oh right, because of Dojo from Pact.
yeah, your guests have an amazing amount of technical capabilities. It's a little intimidating to
Oh
go
my
after
God.
that.
I know. Well, you look great. And look, I have to say, you aren't a talking bear, but you do have a Hawaiian shirt on and some plants in the background.
Thank you for noticing. I wore this for you. I wore this for you.
It's almost matching. Oh, I
Yeah,
have, yeah, we're almost matching. Everybody, we're matching. Look at this. We're here.
you,
Here we go.
we're looking good. The two of us.
We're looking good. So again, thank you for taking the time. I'm very excited to
So
speak to you. I
excited.
know my audience. The audience. We're very familiar. I think most people are pretty familiar with who you are and where you came from by now. A lot of people caught you on the Salt podcast the other day, which was a great chat.
Well, I wanted a dry run before I got to you. I needed a
Right.
practice venue before I hit the big time. So
I know. Well, you know what? Here you are. You made it. You got through Scaramucci, your warm up, and now you got the recoup.
yeah.
So, okay. But in case there's anybody out there, you have a long history in the traditional finance world. You worked at JP Morgan and you were, the Treasury Department, the Milken Institute. There's a lot of different interesting things that you've done. And you've always kind of focused on financial inclusion and, these global markets and bringing capital markets, well-functioning capital markets. Anyways, let's let you talk about it. But what is it about your past that has brought you to your present?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. For me, I'm very interested in growth and prosperity of nations and economies. And I have come to believe, and I think I'm right about this over time, that it's a private sector led growth model. So it's the private sector that is going to drive us to prosperity. And so what does the private sector need? Well, they need access to capital so that good people with good ideas and entrepreneurs can have the money that they need to build their dreams. And so where are they going to get their money from? Well, that's got to come from, can come from the government, of course, but it also needs to come from investors, from household
Right.
savings. And so that mechanism of capital markets that turns household savings into investors and channels that investment into the private sector. If you can get that on a kind of a virtuous circle of growth, that to me is a really important component of how you get economic growth more broadly. And so I have always been about trying to improve that process for entrepreneurs and for savers alike. And so I think that inexorably leads you to crypto. I like to say that kind of from traditional finance to crypto is kind of a one-way street. We'll always have a place for traditional finance, of course, but crypto can really add to the strategy 100% for that.
Yeah. And so, do you think that, the bankers in the traditional finance world, how on their radar, how worried are they about, decentralized finance and all of that? What is your estimation on that?
Yeah, like you said, I spent a couple of years at the NASDAQ and I spent 8 years at JP Morgan, and there's no slouches over there, right? They're very clever financial people that care a lot about the same things that you and I care about, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's new. And of course, the official position is always a little bit different than the position of individual bankers. There are probably very few JP Morgan bankers that I knew that don't have some kind of crypto portfolio, of course, right? Because this is very innovative and very exciting stuff. Now, the traditional banking sector, of course, does have, ever since the financial crisis in particular, a pretty large regulatory burden that they're trying to, operate under. And so they do complain. They complained when fintech came along that, it's not as regulated and they're competing and it's not fair. And I have some sympathy for that in some areas. But I think that they need to wrap their minds around a couple of elements of this. And I think over time, they will continue to be more and more participatory in it. And as soon as they get more and more regulatory clarity, I think they'll do more and more. Now, having said that, there's a pretty, I would say, existential amount of operational risk for the banking sector getting involved in crypto. And a woman named Caitlin Long is very smart on these issues. So I recommend folks to follow her on LinkedIn or Twitter if you are more interested in this kind of idea about how the banking system can operate in crypto with crypto. But she makes the point that it is really really operational risk that it comes down to, because crypto settles immediately without recourse, right? You know, if something happens, you don't get your money back, you lose your keys, you don't get your money back. Whereas the banking system, that banks, they reconcile at the end of the day. So it's end of day clearing, and they are constantly reversing charges. You know, you don't like something and you try to get, you know, your shoes back from the vendor, and you get your, you know, you get your money back or whatever it is. And to have both of those regimes on one balance sheet, you have to think very carefully about operational risk there. And so I think regulators are going to move slowly and make sure that banks have the proper kind of walls between these things to make sure they don't get in trouble.
Right. That also probably eliminates a lot of jobs, doesn't it? You know, if everything is settling immediately, does that, are people losing their jobs there, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the banking system is all about intermediation, right? And so it's about putting people in between buyers and sellers to, you know, to clear and to settle and to move the money. And, you know, that's hold your money until you're sure that everybody is happy, and then you release it in escrow. All that stuff can really at scale be disintermediated by crypto, 100%.
Right. So yeah, there might be a disincentive, or maybe they're not in such a hurry. But okay, so that's interesting. So what about Algorand? I know, you know, we heard your story the other day, but real quick, like, so you've only been the CEO since January, which, I mean, you've come out like guns blazing, and like there's been a whole transformation. I think you have everybody really excited with, you know, obviously your you know, the gravitas that you bring, and the you know, just
shirt, you know,
that's your gravitas.
To that point, this is my most gravitas-esque shirt.
That is your, I'm just so happy that was in your closet, so you can wear it. But I mean, look, there's a humor, but there's also just an attack. It feels like we're getting all of this amazing news today, this morning. This is unraveling right now. We're shooting this Monday morning, but Coinbanks just announced a huge relationship in Nigeria. You know, FIFA was just announced, and that's not just a sponsorship. There's so much going on, and you know, you've been CEO for such a short amount of time. It's like, you know, time flies when the world's on fire. But like, what's going on? How did you get to Algorand specifically?
Well, you know, the way that you phrase that question, I think, is exactly the right way to think about it. You know, we couldn't do these things. We couldn't go after things like the entire digital operations of a government, right? We couldn't go after all of these like large scale plays unless we were a layer one like Algorand, right? Because it's only here that you can go after, you know, and as I like to say, the financial inclusion of the 1.7 billion people that don't have it, right? And so when I was first headhunted to be on the board, and so I started digging in to see as to whether I would accept this board appointment. And I really realized, you know, and I've said this a couple of times now, kind of since when I first became aware of, you know, the potential of Bitcoin, which was a little early again then, you know, and that like, okay, wow, this is the layer one that could actually do it. Like these guys, they have the consensus mechanism that can make it work. And that consensus mechanism famously enables us to scale, right? It enables us to scale with a light carbon footprint. And only with this kind of firepower can you, or can I, or anybody else be the CEO that we want to be. I mean, as a CEO, the thing that you have to worry the most about is the product, right? If you don't have a good product, you know, there's not a lot you can do with that. So for me to come in and be like, okay, I've got the best product. Like, all right, everything else just seems like we just got to keep our foot on the gas pedal, and we need to fire on all cylinders and make sure that we have, you know, the head count, and make sure that we have the marketing spend, and make sure that we have a prioritization of what we're going to go after, and a strategic approach that's global, and that we line up the resources and the accountability that we have and the scale that we want to achieve. And that stuff's easier than, you know, trying to put lipstick on a piggish product, right?
Right. And that seems to be, you know, what a lot of people have to do. And that's I think a lot of us out here look at Algorand, and that's why we got convinced, is because, okay, we see Silvio Macaulay, we see what he's accomplished in his career, and then we actually use Algorand and how fast it is, how cheap it is, and, you know, how it's never been down, it can't fork, you know, all the things that we know and the things that we say. Okay, so you get appointed to the board, and you mentioned Bitcoin real quick. What is your opinion of like of Bitcoin now at this point? Like, Where do you see, do you think that things like Algorand are going to make it irrelevant, or do you see Bitcoin as something completely different? And, what is your opinion of Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, nothing is going to make Bitcoin irrelevant. Yeah, and I hope that's true. I mean, bigger and stronger, things than Algorand have tried to take Bitcoin down. Not that we're trying, we aren't, but like nothing is going to make Bitcoin irrelevant, I will say.
Yeah.
And it is truly decentralized, right? And
Mhm.
it is a protocol where, it's a very interesting idea, right? That you are transforming power, electric power and energy into something monetary. That's a very powerful idea, right? And
Mhm.
and Bitcoin, I think, it should be, I think, thought of as a substitute for gold, right? I mean, when you think about, look, I used to be at JP Morgan, right? We have a gold desk, very, very important gold desk, very important business line for JP Morgan. This is
Mhm.
basically what central banks and other holders of gold do. This is the gold industry. You go to a country, you dig down like 2 miles into the ground, right? You pull this stuff out, you come up, you get shot at, you put it in a Brinks truck, you get shot at, you put it in a plane, you have security guards all around you, you fly in a plane, you land in, like, say, London, you get shot at, you put it in a Brinks truck, and then you bury it in the ground 2 miles under the Bank of England. Like, really? Really? And so the idea that Bitcoin is just as secure because it's so decentralized, right? It's
Mhm.
digital. It's much easier to transact. You don't have to have all those Brinks trucks and people, digging miles into the ground. It's just like, it's an obvious to me part of a portfolio, and it should substitute for gold in not 100%, but in a large sense.
Right. That makes sense. And then, you mentioned, decentralization, and, I talk to Bitcoiners, and a lot of times they say everything except for Bitcoin is a unregulated security. Now, I think it's been pretty clear recently that the United States government also considers Ethereum to be a commodity or currency. What is your opinion on, that accusation towards all the different layer ones and things like that?
I'm so surprised to hear that those Bitcoin guys are maxis. Are they maxis over there?
Yeah, this is news. Breaking news.
This
There
is
are people that really think it's just Bitcoin and that's it.
Is that so? Huh.
Yeah. You haven't heard this, huh?
Yeah. Um, Look, I think, I think Bitcoin has a role, but I do think that, after Satoshi Nakamoto, the most important person in the space is, of course, Vitalik Buterin, right? And
Mhm.
that he could come along and say, like, since these are just digital, these are just like pieces of code, we could make those programmable. We could have this money have an if then statement attached to it. And like, that was pretty revolutionary, right? And then
Right.
again, like Bitcoin, Ethereum was very early and it used the same proof of work protocol, which, they're changing, we're told. And,
Mhm.
it's not quite fast enough, and it's got kind of a heavy carbon footprint still. And it's, the gas fees are kind of famous for it, it's famous for their higher gas fees. And so there is room, of course, for improvement. And then, then additional layer ones come along, and, we're kind of version 3. We're the bleeding edge of where I think we need to get to. But everybody has a place, right, in this
Right.
ecosystem. And we think in a purely multi-chain world, which we are very much support, right? Like those guys over at Algorand Inc., they're spending all their time now on, of course, transaction speed and final settlement speed. So that's, increasing by a factor of X and halving in terms of final settlement. But they're working on state proofs, as you know, very
Yeah.
aggressively, right? And state proofs are only relevant in a multi-chain world, right? So it's not about us being, better than anybody else. I mean, we are, of course, better than everybody else, but it's not about that. It's about, having a multi-chain world where we are a very important kind of ballast of it. Now, I
Yeah.
will say something on regulation, though, because I know that was part of your question, which I think is
Mhm.
really important, that has come out now just this month from FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board.
Mhm.
And they have now, and this is kind of an interesting thing too. We have been asking them to do some accounting treatment of digital assets, of crypto assets, and they've always demurred. It's like they won't even put it on the agenda for discussion. As early as, I think, 2020, end of 2020, and the reason they said was, well, there's just not the interest there. It's like kind of a
Mhm.
niche thing. Why should we be paying attention to it? So just the idea that now it's on the agenda is also an acknowledgement of how big crypto is getting and has gotten, how important it is to household wealth, right? So they have right now, basically, this gets a bit technical, but you can hold assets on your books in different ways and in different like parts of your accounting books. And one is called tradable assets, right? And so and then you have to mark to market your losses on a daily basis. And so we have crypto assets when they're held on the books of a company or an investor. They have to mark to market when they lose money, but they don't mark to market when they go up in value. So you're kind of capped. You use the price that you bought them as your cap, but you have to market whenever you lose. And so this looks from an accounting point of view just terrible. And it's a big disincentive for institutional investors because it's just purely the accounting treatment that they have to use. So the idea that FASB is looking at this and looking at it in a rational way already, that's pretty good news. And honestly, almost anything that they could come up with is going to be a better scenario than what we have right now. So this is kind of technical minutia, but it can end up being very, very important.
Okay. So what you're saying, what's that? Something to watch. So basically what you just said is that there is a real disincentive just from an accounting perspective for institutions to get into crypto because of the way that they have to, how it shows on their books.
How they have to report it. Yeah.
How they have to report it. Yeah. Interesting. And then, we're talking about decentralization, Silvio and Algorand, it makes the claim that they've solved the blockchain trilemma, which is security, decentralization, and speed, correct? And our security, decentralization, and scalability. Then you hear people, they'll say, well, yeah, but then the relay nodes are still permissioned, or things like that. There's a foundation. What is the pushback to people that say that Algorand isn't truly decentralized?
Is it like those people that say, oh, the boat probably has a hole in it? Like people like that?
No, not those guys. Those guys are great. I love the boat hole guys.
I got to tell you, that boat came in second place after you were trash talking. That boat came in second place.
I know. What an epic. I thought it was third. It wasn't third.
I know. Somehow they retabulated over the weekend. Like, I don't know how they do.
Okay.
That boat came in second place, I want to say. With Algorand all over it. All over it.
It's so funny because I actually was in Bermuda, just a couple days afterwards, and I went into, they had like a pop-up shop, and they were kind of closing down, and I was hoping to get a Canadian Algorand hat, but they didn't have any. But
they probably had them, and they didn't want to give you one since you were trash talking about.
Yeah, they had a picture of me on the wall,
hole in it.
Well, and then by the way, we're struggling again. I think the Celtics, what was it, 2 nights ago? They struggled against the Heat, right? Yeah, they did, right? Yeah, it doesn't matter. We don't need to get into sports, Staci.
My brother, I've lived in Boston all my life and grew up in Boston. My brother's a huge Boston sports fan, and he gets so mad at me when I'm like, oh, the Celtics. He's like, you can't just show up for the games where they win, and be like, oh, rah. You don't put the time in all season, year after year with these teams. You don't get to,
Yeah, well, so your brother's accusing you of being a fair weather fan, huh?
A tiny bit, yeah. He was not very happy when I became a Tampa Bay fan when Tom Brady moved to Florida either. Not happy with me at all. But
he wasn't? You're not alone. You're not alone though. But real quick, what is it that you say to, people about Algorand's decentralization?
Yeah, I think you need to think about decentralization in a number of different ways. And I think the first thing to think about is the number of wallets and how dispersed those wallets are. And of course, the velocity of money, how many algo trade among those wallets. Those are all important metrics that we look at to see how wide ranging our economy is, right? Mm-hmm. When you think about decentralization of the infrastructure, we need to, I think, continue to get participation nodes operating on the, we have plenty, but we need to continue to have more, right? That's absolutely. And it's not just it's primarily, I think, the number of wallets that participate, but also the number of the nodes themselves that participate, right? The thing is, though, if you're going to run a participation node, as we get better and better in terms of our performance, we start demanding, meaning the protocol, starts demanding more and more of those participation nodes. And so it is problematic if you're running a participation node that is not up to spec, right?
Got it.
It's problematic if you're running a participation node and you declare yourself as online, but you're not actually online. Or if you go down and we think that you're participating and you're not really participating the way that you need to. And it's also very hard for us to keep track of that, to understand who's not and who's not. So it's a bit of a balance, right? And I think we need to do more. We're exploring with a couple of our partners a way to do like an Amazon Web Services, AWS kind of. We'll run the participation node for your wallets if you want to do it with us, and the foundation will figure out a way to support that. So that's one thing we're doing. We also want to think of giving, some credit in some kind of a crypto type way, right? Like NFTs, or you get to be in a Discord channel, or you're acknowledged in some way if you have. So kind of fun ways like that we're also kind of experimenting with. And then relay nodes is a little bit of a different animal, because those relay nodes really, they can't go down, right? You need to know what they are. They need to, and they are dispersed for sure. And when you have to apply and you have to stake algos to run a relay node, and you're picked, and we look at how geographically dispersed you are, what kind of, setup that you have, and you have to meet certain technical parameters. But I would say that we do keep, for now, a pretty heavy thumb on that, because there's reasons that we don't go down, right? And so we are loath to sacrifice anything that will ever put in any kind of jeopardy the quality of our infrastructure, right? But we get it. We more and more decentralized the infrastructure is, the better it is, right? But we just want to make mistakes on that.
Yeah. So just to unpack what you said a little bit, is that so the relay nodes are spread across the world. There is a permission to it, but then really through randomness and everything else, the participation nodes are the ones that are actually taking part in the consensus, and nobody ever. So, and I've also noticed a lot of new participation nodes have gone online recently. There was I think it was after either ETH Denver or South by Southwest, there was like a spike of like 1,000 participation nodes.
Yeah. And we're going to try to get that number up. And we're just thinking of ways to encourage people. And, I honestly, Silvio says this, and I believe this. There's also a civic duty element to this. If you're going to be an active participant in the Algorand ecosystem, you should probably run a participation node, or you should think about it. If you have the wherewithal to do it, you should seriously consider doing it as part of civic duty.
Yeah. And I think it will, like you said, just incentivizing it in any way, like some acknowledgement. I think that'll help. And then maybe as it goes along, a reward, however that's going to work out. But okay.
Right. And this is also why, and you'll probably bring this up at some point, but as we are kind of rethinking our governance rewards program, what does it count? What does being a governor mean? We're opening the aperture to address these kinds of questions that you bring up, and that I've heard elsewhere in the community as well.
Right. And I think we're going to talk about that. I think before we do that, we're obviously going to talk about governance. But before we do that, Algorand says we're the future of finance, right? FutureFi. This is, we tag it, hashtag FutureFi. This is what we do. So what does the future of finance look that runs on Algorand? How does that look?
Part of this is the future of finance runs on blockchain. And part of it is the fact that we're the best blockchain. So I don't know that, I think it is the idea that we are, and maybe uniquely capable of delivering on the promise of blockchain at scale, which is what gives us our, competitive advantage here. But for me, the promise of blockchain, and this is why I'm in it, this is, why I left a very good career in traditional finances, because I believe that this is really an important solution. And I want to be part of delivering on that solution, is this idea that, and I hesitate a little bit because nobody listening to you needs a blockchain 101 lecture, but just the idea that, all parties are writing to one ledger. This idea that you are sending an algo from A to B is a nice way of thinking about it, but is not actually what's happening, right? It's one ledger, and everybody's writing to the same ledger. And if you think about sort of the history of financial innovation, it's really been about making sure those communications between different balance sheets are as quick as possible, right? And that nothing goes wrong between them. That's not even a question here. You're all writing to the same ledger. And the idea that the many different things that brings with it, that you can understand better the provenance of where your funds come from, the idea that you can trace to their destination better, the idea that you can make micropayments in a way that you could not before, because the dollar is lumpy, right? You're not, there's certain things that, you can't have sub penny things in cash, right? And then that's just the monetary side, which is huge. But when you also start thinking about self-sovereign identity and the opportunities that opens up, I think that is just a game changer for, unfortunately, huge parts of this world that don't have access to identity. And it's not just in developing countries, by the way, it's also in this country as well, where you either give up too much of your identity to do something, or you cannot marshal evidence of who you are and your good history when you need to. And blockchain can solve that. And that's the promise of all kinds of that's the promise of blockchain in theory, right? And solving the holdup problem for data sharing, all of that. But Algorand delivers on that with sub-penny fees, with a very light footprint, at ridiculous throughput and scale. And so, yeah, it's a big world out there, and we are just ready to bring on those projects and to start, the realization of that future of finance, as you said.
Right. And then, and you mentioned state proofs earlier, and that technology, if adopted, and I've heard, I think I've heard you say it, and I've heard a lot of people say it, that, Algorand potentially, in a great scenario, becomes the settlement layer for all of the blockchains on because it's so fast, so cheap, and all that, right? Like, that's kind of the idea.
Why wouldn't you? I'd settle over an Algorand. I mean, I'm the CEO of the foundation, so
yeah.
And I settle on Algorand. Like, why wouldn't you do that? I participated in this. I was an investor in the on-chain monkey. It's kind of one of the first NFTs that were fully on-chain. And so I paid, I think, $4,000 for this monkey, and that's fine. But I had to pay like $178 to buy the damn monkey. I was so furious about that. Like, why did I have to pay $178 to buy this thing? It's like,
and by the way, I think that you probably got a deal. $178. It sounds cheap in gas fees.
It was a while ago. Yeah, it was a number of months ago.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, what was I had another point about that. I was going to say something about, we're talking about state proofs in the settlement layer. And okay, I'm going to move on.
In particular, pride of ownership around state proofs. Mean, if everybody could implement state proofs when it's done, then that would be a much better world for everybody, right? Because state proofs enable you to just take a picture of the Algorand blockchain and understand the state of affairs and believe that is the state of affairs. It's tamper proof, etc. And then just be able to kind of pick it up and teleport it over to, that's a technical term, pick it up and teleport it over to a new blockchain and read it and understand that is in fact the case. So you don't have this like burning and minting process. It's just very much just by smart contract. And you don't need bridges that are have a consensus of like 29 people or whatever it is.
Yeah. And then another point that, I've heard you touch on, and, I think about a lot, is that, well, for one, us in the US, guys in the US, I think sometimes just kind of look at what's happening here, right? And how blockchain can help us and where we want to see things. But Algorand is truly making a global play here. Like this morning, we heard about Nigeria and, El Salvador and Latin America in general. And, this blockchain technology obviously plays a huge part in remittances and, oppressed people in other countries that maybe aren't able to be financially independent because maybe their husband doesn't let them, or whatever the scenario is. You can really have some independence on the phone. And, those damn husbands, right?
Damn husbands,
Look, I had an argument with my wife today. I'm sure she'd agree with you.
Yeah, she called me. She called me, and so
So you're going to bat for her.
Yeah.
Good.
But look, there are places in Africa. I don't mean like remote villages. I mean, I am talking about like big cities in Africa with banks where you need to get a letter from somebody else who's a customer of that bank before they'll give you a bank account, right? Or just imagine that you are in a more of a rural area, that you have to spend a day, going into the biggest town to access your banking services, right? And this I didn't say, but it's a very important point. Of this 1.7 billion that are unbanked, about 1 million of them have some kind of a mobile device, right? Yeah. And so the idea that you can start divorcing the idea of financial inclusion from the fact that you have a bank account, and then you can think about financial inclusion as something different than having a bank account, can go a lot of the way towards making lives easier for folks.
Well, right. And then we all know that, and we won't belabor this point, but we all know that, people that are living close to a zero balance are also the people that get trampled on in the banking industry with fees and all of the different things,
Right.
predatory loans, all that stuff that can happen. And what, DeFi can there's opportunity for people that they wouldn't have in the traditional banking sense. Okay.
Right. It's very expensive to be poor. I mean, that's the bottom
It's
line.
I mean, seriously. And okay, so we mentioned it. We talked about governance. There is a big conversation happening in the community. I'm definitely you're going to be on Twitter Spaces tomorrow. We're shooting this Monday, like I said, but
Yep.
so
Yep. We're gonna have our first
your
town
answer,
hall. First of, I
yeah,
hope monthly town halls.
monthly town hall. But in the meantime, let's talk about it because there is a conversation happening about this, and there's two proposals. One is sort of just continuing the idea of the XGov situation. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the other one is giving basically the DeFi protocols more say in how everything gets done, right? So kind of, if you could break down real quick what we're looking at and what we're voting on as governors.
Yeah, so it's not so much giving the DeFi protocols more say, it's giving the DeFi protocols as agents of the users of those protocols more say. So
Okay.
they are a vehicle for expressing the values and the wishes of their users, and a vehicle for giving them governance, their underlying users giving them governance rewards, right? So, for us, it was kind of an existential mind shift a little bit. And as you know, this governance program started before me. It started as a participation rewards program and turned into governance rewards program because we want to be a decentralized layer one, and we want to have, and we need community input into the way that we run the foundation and the way that we run the protocol, right? So, but then it became clear, or it is clear to me, that there are many ways to be, as Silvio said from the beginning, and as I said earlier on this call, many ways to be a good citizen of our ecosystem, right? It is not just the fact that you lock up some algos for 3 months and you take a vote. That's a very important way to be a good citizen, but it is not the only way. Other ways are to participate in our DeFi community. Other ways are to be a creator in our economy. Other ways are to, run nodes of various kinds. There are lots of different ways that you can participate in this community. And why wouldn't we give you both the rewards and demand of you the responsibility of voting and accountability in the same way that we give this one section of our community? So basically, the idea is that we're calling more participants governors than we started with. We're expanding the definition of what it is to be a governor. So that's the first thing. And the important thing to note about that is that first of all, I will say you should not participate in DeFi if you're not comfortable. Like, don't do things that you're not comfortable doing. This is not a call for, more participation in DeFi. Only invest what you can afford to lose, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not financial advice, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that you are participating in DeFi is a pretty important concept, pretty important pillar of this community, and so you should be rewarded in the same way. It's very much in line with Silvio's initial vision of just citizen participation. Like, we're not going to survive unless all of us are working together on it. Okay, so that's the first part, and then of course we have to go through the protocols because we're not going to issue algos to individuals, and we'll have, and all the technical details we can go through on the call tomorrow, or if you want to, we can go through here. But that's the first piece. The second piece is about giving 2 times the voting per algo if you participate in DeFi, and that is because we have many institutional investors, large institutional investors. We are very deeply grateful to those institutional investors. This is no throwing shade on institutional investors, but those are not the kinds of investors that participate in DeFi particularly, right? They are very, they're conservative. And so we want, and they have outsized voting power right now in our governance. And so this is also a mechanism to just try to balance a little bit more, to take a little bit of the juice away from the bigger institutional players and give a little bit more to the DeFi ecosystem, and which tends to be more retail household kinds of investors. So again, just trying to make it I would say, a more benign governance environment, basically. So those are kind of the two goals with it. And then we're starting with DeFi because you have to start somewhere, right?
Right.
And then we'll continue to get community input and to roll it out to other kinds of participation.
Got it. So yeah, because right now we have a situation where maybe I can, you know, on AlgoFi, I can stake my governance there, and then they're actually giving us the opportunity to vote independently there by creating a new wallet, however they're doing it in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other different approaches, like, you know, you have folks finance where you're basically delegating your vote to them, and then they are going to vote with the foundation, is what they stated they would do. And then they also stated they'll adjust that. So there is that's happening now. So this new approach is basically the same, and it's going to be up to the protocols how to, you know, are they going to give individuals a right to vote? Are they going to have a different mechanism to get to kind of pull the people that are taking part? And then they'll do, so they're kind of, and then they'll receive the rewards for the governance, right? For everybody that's staked in there. And then they're going to distribute it. Now this will it sounds like there's a free market thing happening here, to where if they don't behave the way we want, then we'll move to a different protocol. Is that kind of like, so you're leaving it up to the protocol and how to behave here?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the decentralization ethos for it. I don't think they're going to be that different, frankly, is my guess. But yeah, they'll take the TVL, and over the average of the time, they'll get the average TVL, and that will afford them their governance rewards and their voting right, and they will then have to figure out how they want to vote and how they distribute those rewards.
So does this take away? So if I'm going to, let's say AlgoFi and this new thing gets passed, does this take away me staking as a governor independently, right? And so now if I want to do it this way, I'm actually staking into AlgoFi, the protocol.
Yeah, exactly. So you can participate as a governor. And again, you know, it's important that, you know, you and I have both talked about this, that don't participate in DeFi if you don't feel ready. You just can. Yeah. We don't love you any less if you're just a governor.
Yeah.
You're still a governor. But if you participate in DeFi, you can, and then in addition, you can participate in, say, the AlgoFi Vault. That's a more of a leveraged kind of play. But you can just automatically be counted because you're in AlgoFi or Folks Finance or anywhere else. You will automatically be counted as a governor because you are participating in DeFi, and we think that's an important way of contributing to this ecosystem, of participating in this ecosystem.
Got it. And so, because, you know, I spoke to Anthony Scaramucci recently, and one of his main things was like, look, we got to grow the TVL, we got to, you know, got to grow the community, and these are things that, you know, institutions look at. This is like, you know, when we were kind of hypothesizing about, he had brought up Starbucks, and he's like, yeah, Algorand makes perfect sense for Starbucks, and it would be weird for them not to use them. But at the same time, like, this needs to be more robust. You know, the people, the community, the TVL. So what's the idea here? How does this new approach help us grow the TVL?
Well, right. And I think it's important to say, I come at it a little bit slightly differently than Anthony Scaramucci. I mean, he wants to see that number on the board, and I want to see it actually happening, which will give us that number on the board. So it's not exactly about having the number on DeFi Llama. It's about having a big ecosystem and a robust ecosystem, and a big, robust ecosystem will get that number on the board on DeFi Llama, of course, right?
Right.
So it is, having said that, though, it is true that governance, and we had this to a community vote in the beginning, that there would not be any, you know, punishment if you withdrew your algos in time, right? So that meant that there's no kind of element where participating in governance will give us TVL. So that it is not counted as TVL. So that is a shame in a certain way that we aren't kind of getting credit for the TVL that participates in governance. And so if we want to get those, and like, it's important for me to say again, it's not about getting the number up per se, it's about having this robust ecosystem, but we aren't getting credit for those. And so participation in DeFi will also get that TVL number up, however we end up counting it. Yeah.
Right. Got it. And so, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. And, you know, to people that say, well, doesn't this further centralize governance instead of decentralized governance? I think you've said it. But the point is that we already have a problem with huge institutional people just kind of sitting there taking the rewards and can sway a lot of these votes already. So getting the people that are actually participating and, you know, the protocols and having them have maybe a bigger say, I think further decentralizes it, if you ask me, as far as I
Yeah,
understand.
100%. That's the whole idea. That's the whole idea. Like the
Yeah.
idea is all about decentralization. That's the
Okay.
idea.
I have a show and I have a comment section on my show, and a lot of people are, they're misty-eyed about the good old days of participation rewards. They want let's just get rid of the governance. And like you said, the governance idea was born before you. So now you're here, you're in charge of this new decentralized governance. What do you say to people that say, look, it would be better, we would grow faster if we just had participation rewards?
I'll say, I miss those participation rewards too, because the foundation held a lot of Algo, and we would get
Yeah.
participation rewards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, where's this hole in our budget? Oh, well, we don't participate in governance awards because, we're moving to decentralization. And, I have to say, I was like, oh, that's a shame. Can we bring back the participation rewards? I like my Algo as much as
so are you, do you have burner accounts? Are you the one commenting under my videos?
Totally.
Staci's like,
but again, it's not, you have to have civic engagement in this community. And so part of the way that you have civic engagement is that you lock up your algos and you vote. Other ways to have civic engagement are to participate in DeFi, or to be a creator, or to run a proper participation node which meets the technical requirements, or a relay node, or whatever it is. Like, we're still thinking this through, but you gotta participate. And so oddly, participation rewards didn't really require participation in the stricter form of the word, right?
Right. Yeah. You could just kind of, and I get it. It's like, let's reward more the people that are actually doing something to. I think it makes a lot more sense to personally to me. And what was I going to say? I was going to say something about, we were talking about participation rewards, and then that was something that I was thinking. As you were saying that, I was thinking about, look, okay, so there's 10 billion Algo that that were minted. I think nearly 70% of those are in circulation. So we have about 30% left, and it'll be fully dispersed by 2030. Now, with the foundation, with the with Inc., and Scaramucci brought up this point. He's like, there's people in pain right now, but there's also, developers and the people that are working at Inc., with Algo at 44 cents. And, there's just, it gets harder. Now, as the Algo gets fully distributed by 2030, and maybe this is too far out to even speculate, but what's the plan kind of to keep, the foundation going, Inc. going? Like, how, once there's no more Algo, how does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've only used about 6, so we're at 6 and some change, so we're not quite to 7. But what happened in the, and again, I wasn't here, but the community in the beginning didn't like the fact that it wasn't as well stipulated as it needed to be, what the kind of the monetary supply process of the Algo was going to be. And so they made an effort to just put a framework around how the foundation would spend money, because we don't want to be like dumping Algo. Obviously, we're very concerned about that, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have, put that in place. And then when we think about our long-term sustainability, of course, now I'm telling, staff, little things and big things, like, everybody be careful about travel budgets, and like make sure about, we're stewards of our own budget and stewards of our own ecosystem. We all have to act very responsibly about that, right?
Right.
Having said that, though, when I came in, it was a go big or go home play for us, right? Like, and I think we were conservative in our nature, and so we didn't want to I don't think we made at the foundation level. In the protocol, they invested a lot, right? So they have always invested a lot in making this the best layer one from a technical point of view. But from the foundation point of view, we could have invested in much more in marketing. I don't know if you've heard that. Have you heard on Twitter people complaining?
Yeah, nobody ever complains about the marketing. No.
Nobody.
And by the way, you in the ultimate, like, just you came on the scene, and like, man, you've successfully quiet those people. I mean, there's still a couple of people, and they just look ridiculous now.
Yeah.
Like when somebody complains about the marketing, I don't even feel the need to engage. Like it's like,
Yeah,
really?
it's
Yeah,
like
that doesn't make sense.
marketing. We got it. But
Problem
they were
solved.
right. They were right. Totally.
Yeah.
This was an absolutely fair criticism. And but of course, hats off to the marketing team that we do have, like Steve Daigan and Kelly Callahan, right? Like they did so much with the resources that they have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, so it's not that we're going to slow down because the algo is at 45 cents. Like we're not going to do that. We are investing for the long term. And it is not about Algorand versus Avalanche or Algorand versus Solana. There's a huge world out there, and we are going to be the future of finance, right? And so we are continuing to hire, we are continuing to invest for the medium term, and we are continuing on our marketing to make sure that we are understood. And I myself, I'm going to be out there more. You're going to get sick of seeing me, and I'm knocking on your door like, hey, I haven't been on your podcast for a while. Can I come back? I want to talk about something.
Always welcome.
Oh, you say that now. Say that now.
Okay. No, I'm always welcome.
And so
what you're sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. And then just to say, and I mean, I know this is a bit brash perhaps to say this, and it is not to make light of what anybody's going through right now with Terra Luna at all, because this is really, I mean, $56 billion is not anything to sneeze about for anybody, right? But we think that this is probably going to be good for us this crypto winter, right? So we don't like it. Nobody likes having their coin price at 45 cents. Nobody likes that, especially it's a little bit dispiriting when you are doing all of these things finally, and then and it's so China and supply chain and war in Europe, and it's just like so much that doesn't have anything to do with us. It's just like you feel like you're trying so hard, and my team is they're tired and they're working hard, and and then to have this happen, it's just not fun, right? But when you think about it in the medium term, this is what separates, sort of the men from the boys, or the women from the girls, right? And we're going to be fine, right? We have a good runway. We've got we have the best tech, and we've got I like to say a couple of year oxygen tank on our back, right? So we're going to come out on top on this, and this is where we're just going to be building, and we're going to be ready for when spring comes again.
Yeah. So it sounds like the bear market is not slowing down Algorand.
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
And I mean, and I've discussed this before, but it sure seems like when these types of things happen, you see a Terra Luna die, and I'm sure we're going to see other things fall off as well. People start to look at the tech a little bit more. They want to know that it's going to work. And Algorand clearly is set up to be, stay up and be the good tech. And then there's an investment in FIFA. I mean, I'm sure it is frustrating for, I'm sure you guys, for all of us retail guys, because if we weren't in a bear market, that FIFA announcement would have been, I mean, come on, FIFA is the largest sports organization in the world. I mean, this is an insanely huge development.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, for some reason that's not entirely clear to me, people enjoy watching grown men like running back and forth across the field after the ball
and never score.
And
then the end of
I'm not here to judge. I'm not. But I will tell you something a little bit, maybe a little bit more internal. It's interesting because I'm also trying to hire a number of people in very senior positions, right? And there's one, I don't even say 1 to 3, but one in particular, gun ho, and then I'm not there anymore, right, as a candidate. And it made me think this is also very good for my hiring, because if you're just in it for like a pumping play and you think it's like a short ride, you're not the real deal. And it's very hard for me to tell that in a booming market. And it's easy for me to tell that when we're sliding into a bear market, who's real, who's going to roll up their sleeve, who's going to invest for the medium term. It's just helping me be a bit more discerning that way. And so it has an interesting kind of silver linings to the gray cloud, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to look at it. I heard somebody say this in a Spaces, and I don't know if they were leaking it or if this is public knowledge or not, but is it true that the foundation actually, instead of just the grant approach where, thank you. Welcome to the ecosystem. We want to support you. Is it also true that the foundation is starting to make give money, but also take an equity stake in certain projects and things like that? Because that seems like another approach that would create sustainability and and for the longer term. Is that a true thing?
Yeah, I called it. Now, see, I have to pause here because I'm going to be showing my age, but well, the last video game that I spent a lot of time playing was Space Invaders. This is like Pac-Man, early.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is a little bit like a Space Invader strategy. You're kind of shooting at things as they come into you. So we open a grant, and we have a link on the website. Everybody can just kind of, as opposed to, and we were giving away very small grants. And to me, it's not as strategic of an approach, right? That you have lots of people coming in. Everybody that wants something gets to, and that you give out small amounts of money. So what I want to do is I want to give out bigger amounts of money. I want to have a sense that developers that are coming through our ecosystem through hackathons and accelerators and all of that, we understand them. We've reorganized ourselves internally. So somebody's in charge of DeFi, somebody's in charge of Web3, somebody's in charge of NFTs, somebody's in charge of gaming, so that those business development type ecosystem people it's their job to know what's going on in that vertical. It's their job to know who the developers are and where the good players are and where the smart people are and all of that, what we want to go after and how we can prioritize and be strategic, and then be a full partner with them, either by giving more money and taking some upside, or having a right to take some upside and actually making some investments where we believe, so that it's a partnership for ecosystem growth. And I have to say that so far this has been yielding some pretty good results, actually. And so we're excited about that, because you want to put all your eggs in one basket and watch the basket, right? And so it's not going to be just one basket, but we're going to go bigger with fewer partners rather than little with like anybody that applies to our website.
That makes sense. Yeah. And so,
and we'll talk about that more tomorrow too, as well.
Okay. Oh, so that is okay. That is on the docket there.
Yeah. See, you scheduled this for the day before the thing.
Yeah, I got to get. I'm front running here. I'm actually going to put this out today.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah, we're taking a little bit of wind out of our sails for tomorrow. Still calm though, everybody. Please, still dial in.
Yeah, no, you got to. Well, no, this will just probably instigate more questions. Really, I've talked to Michael Cotton. I've talked to a couple. You mentioned Pact and Dojo from Pact and XPact, and I've talked to these guys. Mainly in Australia, I guess, but they talk about the Algorand summer, right? They're like, this is going to be a great summer. We've already seen things like FIFA. And so, I mean, are we excited? Should we be excited about what's going on in the summer and some of the things that you guys have planned?
Yeah. I mean, we are just like all systems firing 100%. Yeah. We've got this, Climate Ride partnership. We've got the, Emerge Americas. We've got the FIFA. We've got, I mean, so much going on, right? The sale GPs, all of these are big partnerships. We're going to continue to grow these and continue to have more of these. And we've got so many people now so many projects going through the audit process, so many projects now on testnet coming onto mainnet. It's just, I mean, it's like the Cambrian explosion of Planet Algorand is what I'm expecting for 2022 for sure.
Well, also, actually, you just reminded me from your interview the other day. You mentioned disaster relief, and what is Algorand's part? What are they doing with disaster relief payments?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the disaster relief organizations. I mean, I feel so sorry for those guys. I mean, they are often seriously flying with like $50,000 worth of prepaid debit cards to these disaster relief things and handing out these prepaid debit cards to people that have lost everything, right? And then in addition, it lends itself to a lot of fraud, right? Because you might be going with FEMA Texas and also FEMA federal, and you might be double dipping, and it's very hard to tell, but you can't do the due diligence, take a long time to do it because people need the money now. And so the whole thing is just fraud. It's like perfect for a blockchain play. And if you're a disaster relief organization, and we are going to announce the kickoff of 2 really important partnerships on this. It's not something that I don't want to kind of like jump ahead of the announcement, but it's not a secret necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
That we are going to be the blockchain for the disaster relief payments for these two very large organizations. And so what that means, and it goes also though, Cooper, to this identity question, where you know, sometimes these disasters hit where people don't have a well-established identity. But if you can take a picture of yourself and maybe and show a picture of your, you know, living room and establish your identity in like 5 or 6 different ways, then they know that your living room, yeah, it is flooded, and you can prove that you live there. Then you can, all of that money can start going to you more easily when you need it, right? This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, moving the dial on impact and inclusion that we really, really care about. We just hired an amazing guy named Matt Keller, who ran the Global X Prize for Learning for the Elon Musk's Global X Prize. And he's done a lot of work in voter participation and a lot of work. And he was at the MIT Media Lab doing 1 laptop per child, which is one of the very first big programs to try to get laptops into the hands of all kids in school in developing countries. He worked at the World Food Program for a while, like real heavy hitter. And he's going to be running our impact work. And this is kind of one of the first things that he sort of, you know, is leading for us now, is like get these disaster relief payments. It's just obvious how great this would be. And of course, if it's a disaster, you know, your layer 1 better not go down in the middle of a disaster, right? You got to make it. And because disasters are caused by climate so much more now, you better make sure that your layer 1 does not have a large carbon footprint, right? So this is what I mean, where it's like we're just built for this stuff. We're the game for this kind of stuff, right?
Well, exactly. And it just seems like, you know, everybody talks about what blockchain can do for the world, right? And it does seem to me, and maybe like you said, you're the CEO of the foundation. My channel is so heavily directed towards Algorand. So I get that we're in a bit of a bubble, but at the same time, I try to stay, impartial here and look at the real situation. It seems like Algorand's actually delivering on what blockchain can do for the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, do you agree? I mean, like we hear about Nigeria today, El Salvador, anyways, moving on. And then you also mentioned Elon Musk. And so you got Kimball Musk at Dequency, right? He's invested in Dequency on the Algorand blockchain. You have this X Prize guy. I mean, at what point is old Elon? Have you sent him any emails? How are we going to get Elon? I mean, it makes sense. The carbon negative blockchain.
Yeah, you know, he called me on Friday night, and he was just asking me, you know, what my views were on things, and I said, just we finish this Twitter stuff first, and then we can talk. So
okay. So you brushed them off a little bit. You're like, hey, Elon. A little bit. I get it.
I'm irritated.
Another. With all the stuff, like just close Twitter. All right, just make that deal. Stop with the. He's got his own set of problems. Oh, another big another big guy, Martin Shkreli. Did you see this? The pharma bro.
Yeah, what happened there? What?
Okay, so the headline. It's an amazing headline. The headline or the beginning of the story is convicted felon Martin Shkreli. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. Convicted felon Martin Shkreli gets released from prison on Wednesday and touts the Algorand blockchain. So it's like they tried to put Algorand as close to convicted felon as possible. But he came out, Martin Shkreli just got out of prison, and he came out saying that Algorand and Solana are, he's really bullish on Algorand and Solana. So my question is, are you guys at the foundation working closely with the pharma bro?
No. In fact, you know, and I tell you, when you were saying that, I thought you were going to, I did see something on Twitter about, and somebody making fun of some tweet, but I didn't really. And so I thought you were going to say something else. And then I was going to make a joke that said, I thought you were going to say Algorand. And then you did say Algorand. Like, no.
He definitely, he went on Twitter Spaces and was talking about Algorand and Solana as, good investments. So, Hey, look, if you can trust anybody, you can definitely not trust that guy. Don't listen to that guy. That's one guy. I mean, I'm almost willing to forgive anybody. Like, they love Algorand. That's great. And I'm kind of like with that guy, I'm like, you can go ahead and leave it alone, sir. All right. Did I miss anything? Thank you so much. We're almost up to an hour. Like, did I think?
What?
If we got to Martin Shkreli, I don't think I missed anything.
I feel like you probably didn't miss anything on the way down.
Yeah, I mean, this really is. Thank you Thank you so much for taking the time. Okay, I'm going to speculate real quick. We like to read the tea leaves in the community. There is, there's been a little bit of hype around Starbucks or possibly PayPal building their stablecoin using Algorand. You know, should we be excited about some bigger announcements like that, or should we just kind of be like, hey, relax, man? You just got FIFA. Like, what are you're being greedy? Like, what are your thoughts on some of this speculation that happens in the community about something like a Starbucks or a PayPal?
Relax, man. We just got FIFA. Now you're being greedy.
Okay, there you go. And that's it, folks. You heard it from her after I said it. All right. Thank you so much, Staci. This was so much fun.
And it was so much fun to be here.
And thank you for the shirt and the plants. I mean, this is
I love this shirt.
All right.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed that chat with Staci. She is literally the best. But before I go, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Headline Inc. Headline is scaling in a bear market. They are hiring devs. They just made an acquisition. They acquired Algo Trade, which is ASA charts and ASA swapping, folks. They have DAO tools like Algo Vote, Pipeline UI, Forum Social Network. Headline does it all. And they are huge players in the Algorand ecosystem, and you should definitely check them out. So if you don't know about them, you want to learn more, follow them on Twitter at headline_crypto. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.